video. All right. Hello, everybody. Oh, that was so loud. I'm sorry. My name is Man Alone, and for the next hour or so, I will be your guide into the wild and wonderful world of solo role-playing. This video is going to be a real crowd pleaser slash non-pleaser. My last video that I did like this got some really fun feedback from both directions. A lot of people really liked it. It's more of a philosophical approach to solo role playing. And then other people, one of my favorite comments, let's just call it from someone, Nate, who is a fan of the channel and has commented before, and I really did enjoy this comment. It just was something like, oof, all I could say is thanks and on to the next one. So yeah, this kind of video is may not be everybody's bag o' beans, but if that's the case for you, no worries, no offense taken. I am not deluded enough to think that every video I make or every interest I have is going to match the interest of everyone out there, and I think most of you, Nate included, are level-headed enough to know that. And if you're not, if you feel a sense of enraged entitlement when a YouTuber does a video that you don't like, and you sort of get into a frenzied sort of monkey dance sort of mode and want me to just do the videos you like, I would recommend that you get like a grip. And once you have a grip of your mouse or your trackpad, just go ahead and click on some other video. I know YouTube has at least 10, 11 other videos that you could look at. And I'll be back soon with a video you like, because I upload new videos when I'm not sick or on vacation. I upload a new video about every 6 hours. So and we have some real bangers coming up here. So I was doing a little bit of prep, and it is in fact prep for some upcoming videos that sparked the idea for this one. So I was looking through the extensive library of 12 years paraphernalia sent to me by Max Moon Games, and this looks awesome. Can't wait to do a playthrough of this. And in fact, inside the box, and I don't want to dig around for it too much because I think that'll make a lot of unnecessary sound, but there was like a tiny little sheet of paper with a Bandcamp download code for a band called Cthulhugans, which I think might be Max Moon's band. I'm not sure, but I have an inquiry out there for Max Moon to say, because the album kind like kicks a fair amount of ass. And so I was like, hey, can I like play this while I'm doing the playthrough? I don't want to get like copyright strike or anything like that, but so Max, if you're seeing this video, let me know. I think it would be kind of cool to do both together. And then also, thank you to Chaoclips, Brandon says inside here, for sending a copy of Solitary Depths. I was doing like a few practice playthroughs so that I can continue my Merc Borg playthrough that I started in my last video. Thank you to all the comments on that video and some really great ideas. I think I will be adding maybe another player character or a companion as I continue the playthrough. But this is like a solo supplement to the solo supplement to Morkborg. And it's really cool. It's described by the author as modular, so you can kind of use the pieces you want and ignore the stuff you don't. But some really cool mechanisms in here. First of all, there's like area specific generators for encounters of monsters and NPCs. And then there's this really cool, and I mean, it's pretty simple, but it's this easy way to convert oracle questions into like a positive formation, so that the yes answer is like not desired, and then whatever you'll throw the 2d20 like you normally do with the powered by the apocalypse type strong hit, weak hit, fail system, but then you'll actually use the sum of those to serve as like the difficulty rating for whatever it is that is no good. And I could talk a little bit more about that because this is not the subject of the video, but there was just a little bit too much synchronicity to ignore as I was going through this book called Solitary Depths. And as you may have noticed, on my playing area right here, I was trying to move stuff out because in my last playthrough, I felt very constricted. And I think I didn't do so well, but I think I got about one more row here and maybe one more row here. And I don't know if you know this, nor are you're probably not interested in this, but I'll say it anyways, as I am wont to do. But a lot of why I have this stuff here is because it's all stuff I frequently use. Okay, so it's not like a fake set, but part of the arranging of it is, I need stuff where I need it so that I can get to it. I want stuff to look cool and interesting, but also I position stuff to avoid areas of like extreme glare, as like right here. So I'll put, usually something very dark in areas where these big light glares are. And when you do that, you kind of have to balance that out, because what can happen as a consequence of that is you can get very long shadows. And so I was sitting here obsessing over this. This is like kryptonite to me, like just moving stuff around like this, trying to avoid these shadows, reading Solitary Depths, always thinking about Jung. And suddenly I said, you know what? I got to make a video about the shadow and shadow work and how I believe it's involved in solo role-playing and role-playing of all types and games of all types. And you know what? I think it's involved in just about everything. And discovering this concept and doing a lot of work around this was a big part of my recovery from addiction. And it is a big part of it. It's an ongoing thing. And I think that solo role-playing provides a unique way in for that. There's tons and tons of stuff online about the shadow and shadow work. And one of the biggest questions that gets asked is like, well, how do I do it? How do I access the shadow? Which is a little bit tricky, because it's one of those things that knowing the right way to do it involves like the legwork of discovering it yourself, right? It's one of those very infuriating things about life where no matter how many times someone explains it to you, it's only going to work when you do that work and you walk that path and you struggle with it. As Jung would say, if the path ahead of you is clear, it's because you're walking on somebody else's, right? They've already cleared it for you. And so, part of this is walking your own path, but discovering what that path is, you need to have these opportunities of being with yourself. And you need opportunities to encounter yourself and parts of yourself that you don't want to encounter. And I think that solo role-playing, again, can be a really powerful way for this. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but I want to talk a little bit about the shadow, about what it means to me. I think what's going on with it in society right now, maybe. What it has to do with solo role playing. I assume that most of you who are watching this right now probably have some notion of this, and even if you don't know specifically about Jung or about the shadow, you probably can infer a little bit about it, just because it's like, oh, if I talk about my shadow, and I said, well, what does that mean? Most people aren't going to be like, I think it means your favorite fruits. No, obviously your shadow is a dark part of yourself. It's sort of like a reflection, but it's not a reflection, right? It's a place where light is obstructed. And I think this is a really good video as well, because I will share that next month, I am turning 40. And as Jung would also say, your life begins at 40. Everything up until that point is just research, which is a little bit of a cope. But I think a little cope is in order for any sort of approach toward midlife. And so this was really important for me to know, and so I just want to talk about it a bit. And even if you already know about it, maybe it could be helpful to just have a little bit of discussion on it. So, what Jung would say is that your shadow is the pieces of yourself that you have hidden from the world, and the creation of your shadow usually happens very, very early in your life. Probably around the time where you first become verbal, right? And there's some sort of event, all right? And it doesn't have to be a big event. It could be very minor. You might not even remember it. But basically, there is some moment early in your life when you, completely innocently, you have no idea because you were just made not too long ago. You show a part of yourself, okay? You have no idea that this part of yourself is controversial. You have no idea that this part of yourself would be something that some people wouldn't like, because again, you have only been alive for like 900 days, right? And so you show this part of yourself, and somebody doesn't like it. And it's usually somebody who's like a primary relationship. So it's usually your parents, it could be your siblings, another caretaker, it could just be an adult in your life, is very important. But somebody rebukes you for this behavior. And you are very shocked and very confused because you weren't trying to do anything wrong, right? By that time, you know when you're being bad, right? You know when you're sneaking an extra cookie or something like that. And this isn't anything that's bad. So why am I getting yelled at? But it's made very clear to you that whatever this piece of you that you have just shown is, that is not an okay, that's not okay to have that piece of yourself. And, again, it could be anything. But what almost every child would do when that event happens is that they hide it. They stuff it down. They go, well, I don't really understand why that's bad, but it's very clear that it's bad because I got in trouble or somebody yelled at me or they made me feel really bad or they embarrassed me. And because, you're a child, you're not going to be able to come up with like a super elaborate schema for hiding a part of yourself. And so you're just going to tuck it away. You're just going to be like, okay, well, that's obviously not good to be that way. And so I will hide it. And that's what you do. You hide that. And if you don't, you get punished again and again and again, right? Until you hide it. And it's maybe not like a punishment. It doesn't have to be a punishment, but it could be anything that sort of like humiliates you, chastises you, censures you. For my own life, and I don't want to make this all about my own life, but I think it's helpful to give an example. I have a memory. I must have been like 3 or 4. And I was at a family party and I told a joke. And I think thinking back on this, it was probably really cute. I just came into the room and all the adults were talking and I said, hey, I have a joke. And I told the joke, which is, like kids suck at jokes, but I told the joke. I thought it was really funny. And then my dad took me aside and was like, you don't do that. You are not the center of attention. Okay. And it really embarrassed me. I felt like humiliated by that. And the lesson that I got from that was to be undemonstrative, to be modest. I come from a pretty strict upbringing, like military family type thing. And so the idea of like intentionally drawing attention to yourself, being demonstrative, being expressive, that was associated with being sort of immodest, annoying, maybe unmasculine, right? And so I was like, whoa, I have stepped over some line and I should not have done that. And so I tucked it away. I tucked it away inside myself. And when you tuck that piece of you away, that becomes your shadow. And what shows up in place of that shadow, and this isn't a Jungian term necessarily, Freud talks about this as well, but in this situation, what happens then is that is the first step in developing your persona, right? And this persona is a mask. It's a mask that you wear, and it's like, this is the mask that I am supposed to wear to get people to like me. And as long as I wear this mask, I won't get in any trouble and nobody will be mad at me. And so you wear that mask and it works out really well, because when you wear that mask, you get like lots of positive feedback and people seem pleased with you. And certainly that situation that you had before where you got yelled at for being a certain way, that's not happening anymore. And so you're like, dang, this is really great. This was really easy. All I had to do was kind of take that undesirable, socially unacceptable part of myself and go ahead and throw it down the basement stairs into the basement, right? And I will shut the door and I will throw away the key because I don't really need that part of myself, right? And that's what you do. You throw this piece of yourself down in the basement, and then you go and live your life. And as you move on, your persona becomes stronger, and your shadow spends more and more time in the basement of your soul, so to speak, right? And this seems like a perfect solution for a while, but it stops being a perfect solution for a number of reasons. The first reason is because you start to notice, especially as you move into sort of the more industrious parts of your life in academics and getting jobs and whatever sort of like things you're doing with that, you start to notice that even when you are achieving something, or even when you're doing something that you are thinking it's like, oh, this is a really good thing that I want to do, and this is a thing that if I succeed at it, I will feel successful, and if I fail at it, I'll feel miserable, and I've just succeeded. But how come even though I have succeeded right now, I feel really empty and miserable? And the reason for that is because you have done that thing because that's what your persona wants, right? And your persona is not completely false. Some part of you wants that, but there's a half of you right here that is not satisfied by that at all. Okay. And so for me, that was playing sports. I played sports and I got really good at them. And then I would win stuff and I would do really well. And everyone would be like, great job. And I would smile. And then I would, so many times I would like get back on the bus after the game and I'd be like, I don't give a shit. I don't care that I just did that. Right? Because that's what my persona wanted. All right. And so that's the first thing, is this feeling of hollowness and dissatisfaction. But at that point, you don't really associate it with anything. Now, the second thing that starts happening, and this becomes more and more of a problem as time goes on, is that the shadow, even though you locked it down here, it didn't go away and it didn't die. And in fact, sometimes when like the bolts holding your persona in place get loosened. And so that could be when you're angry, right? That can be when you're tired. That can be when you're sad. And that can be when you're drunk. The persona slips off, and that shadow comes bounding up the steps and does the shadow stuff. Okay. So for me, right, just using my example, this like desire to be noticed and seen and all that, when any of these things would happen, I would really put on a show, right? I would really make myself the center of attention. And it could have been good, could have solved the problem sometimes. But to a certain point, especially with this one, it often led to a lot of me being a menace, right? I would say things that were really terrible. I would hurt people. I would try to embarrass other people. I would try to gain advantage over other people. I would try to act superior to them, et cetera, et cetera. And so the problem starts to compound, right? Because the next day, when you're no longer one of these things, or whenever that resolves, you look at what this dummy did and you say, look at the trouble you got me into. I told you to stay in this basement and you came back upstairs, and look at all the problems now. Everybody's mad at me. A lot of people lost respect for me. People don't trust me. And the only way I'm going to get this back is if you stay where I tell you to stay, down in the basement, and don't come upstairs and don't bother me anymore. And you slam the door, right? And as life goes on, and as you continue living with this persona and you continue feeling empty because your whole self is not being catered to, and you start seeking more and more behaviors to numb you, right? Because you start feeling this pain or this emptiness. And then the cycle goes on, because the more things you do to try and avoid that feeling actually are things that lead this door to being open. And then the shadow comes up, does its thing, you throw it back down, you yell at it, and you start to be terrified of it, because you're like, this thing is a monster. Every time this thing comes out of the basement, it ruins my life. And I don't know what to do about this thing. I need to purge it from myself, right? And the thing that most people do at that point, right? This is kind of like a step that has to go. You have to go through. You can't get there from here without going through this. Is intense denial and suppression, right? And some people take this so far that they will actually do what's called reaction formation. They will become a symbol of the thing that is most against the shadow, right? Because they'll start seeing the shadow in other people. They'll start seeing their own shadow, right? So I would see obnoxious, loud people and I would say, oh my God, I hate that person. Why is that person embarrassing themselves? But then you hear stories all the time where, like, people who are like drug czars, you then find out that they get caught in like a hotel room with a bunch of drugs, right? Or people that are really against like a certain type of sexuality, you find out they, are having some romp of that kind. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, how could this be? But like every time I hear that, I'm like, well, of course, right? This person is so invested in denying their shadow that they've actually created an entire persona that is dedicated to hunting down and vanquishing their shadow. Okay. This is rampant in society right now. There are so many factors that make this the case. People with social media have become shadow hunters. They are in such intense denial of the dark parts of themselves that they have taken it upon themselves to root out and find their own shadow everywhere but in themselves. And that is why people so gleefully punish people online. That is why people take the worst version of what people say and use it against them. And why they have no mercy, they have no time for understanding, they have no pathway to redemption, is because as long as they are vanquishing their shadow, nobody will suspect that that shadow is in them. They will find it everywhere else except in themselves. Because, of course, they are good and they are pure and they aren't that person. Look over there. There's that person. There's that person who has that really bad habit. There's that person that did that bad thing. Not me. And in fact, if I find those people, nobody will even suspect me of it. And often it's not even conscious. Like, it's not like this is some nefarious scheme. It becomes so automatic and baked into their firmware that people forget that this is what's happening, okay? And there's an intense fear of the shadow. Because if anyone were to find out that you have this monster inside of you, you will be vanquished just like everyone else. That's the scariest part of this, is you deal with these others so mercilessly. And then you have this fear because you're like, geez, I don't have mercy for these people whose shadows I found. If anyone finds my shadow, I'm screwed because nobody's going to take mercy on me, right? So what do you get? You get an extremely paranoid, vindictive, spiteful, hurtful society that has extremely low social capital. Okay. I promise I'm getting to solo RPGs. Okay. So at some point, if you're lucky, you lose everything, right? If you're lucky, if you're a person who has a difficult relationship with the shadow, I don't think everybody has this difficult relationship. I think there are some people who are able to work this out without having to go through these lengths. But there's some of us, myself included, I really had to lose it. I had to hit rock bottom, right? And at that point, there is no other choice, right? The choice is either I stay up here with this closed door and keep this guy down there and try my best not to let him up and punish him and send him back down if I do. I can keep doing that, or I can do the one thing that I am most scared of doing, and that is going down and facing this monster, okay? And so you get a lot of therapy. Maybe you take some meds if you need to. Maybe you talk to a spiritual leader, right? You read a lot of self-help, whatever works for you, okay? I would probably say, and this is my unprofessional opinion, that probably a lot of those things you find out later you don't need as much if you're able to confront your shadow. But I'll stop there because I don't want to push too many buttons. But you build yourself up and you go down there to face this monster, and you have a bunch of weapons, right? And those weapons are the things I talked about, weapons and shields, right? Whatever you have, therapy, self-help, maybe someone needs to hold your hand. Maybe you need to talk to somebody who is a mentor of yours, a guru, a priest, a psychiatrist, whoever it is. You arm yourself and you go to face this thing down. And it's dark down there. And you hear it breathing, and you get closer and closer, and you are so afraid. You have spent your whole life avoiding this monster. And you get close, and you turn your little lantern on, and you can finally see the monster. And you know who that monster is? It's not a monster at all. It's a kid. And they're 3 years old, and they just told a joke. And it was a funny joke. And instead of people being nice and laughing at it, they took him aside and told him that he was an embarrassment. Okay? And if you can see that child, and you're an adult now, that's the benefit that you have, right? You're an adult now. And you realize all this time, all this pain could have been avoided if that adult, 30 plus years ago, would have just said, hey, that was a funny joke. All of this pain could have been avoided. And you're about to get angry, but then you realize, hey, I'm an adult now. I can do that. And you go to that kid and you say, hey, that was a funny joke. I really liked it. You give him a hug. And what happens when you do that, what happens when you stop running from that shadow, is that you realize that you have been working this whole time. You've been working with half of yourself missing. You've been going through life trying to do your best with only half of your power. And yeah, this guy, it's he can get us into some trouble, right? He can say things we shouldn't say. But you're an adult now, right? And so you got to look again at what this monster is doing, right? You keep saying, oh, this monster is saying all this stuff that's getting us in trouble. That's what the adult those 30 years ago thought. But the truth is, this shadow, it loves to make people laugh, and it loves to entertain people, and it loves to make people feel good. And that's a really beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. And so, yeah, sometimes this guy's going to want to say something mean or get one over on somebody or be too clever or something. And you say, hey, you don't got to do that. Okay. You're in control. You're the adult, but I love you. I love that part of myself, right? And that part of yourself goes into you, and it becomes, you now have 100% of yourself. You are now working at 100% capacity. Okay? It's a nice story, right? What's the next question? Next question is, okay, cool. How do I do it? Well, I don't know how to do it for anyone except me. Okay? And for myself, the one lesson I learned I learned a lot of lessons, but the one lesson I would say that is probably transferable, even though it's vague, is you have to go to the place that scares you the most. You have to descend into the basement. And interestingly enough, descending into a basement is pretty similar to saying you have to delve into a dungeon. Now, this is the part where I try to sell you my self-help books for 4 payments in $19.95. That's okay. You could save the money. I'm not saying that doing dungeon delves is going to do this. I'm saying that for me, no longer going out and drinking on a Friday night, I felt like my life was over. I felt like there was nothing for me to do anymore. And then also that feeling of not having a thing that I can make the pain go away with, that scared the shit out of me. This idea that, what if I start feeling that feeling and I have nothing? What am I supposed to do? And I was so lonely because I felt that the whole world was happening and I wasn't there. Everyone else was drinking and flirting and partying and, high-fiving and having a great time. And I had to stay home. And I remember I got so lonely at one point, and I was sitting alone in my room, and I share this very embarrassing thing with you in the hopes that maybe this helps somebody or helps you to help somebody. And I said out loud, for no reason at all, to this day, I don't know what sort of like feeling rose up in me. I said, am I real? Do I exist? And I was truly like, I didn't know, because I was so separated from the world. I was like, I don't know. And what happened is for the first time, that feeling of emptiness and vacancy, I didn't push it away. I just let myself feel that. And I wasn't ashamed. I just let myself feel how pathetic and sad and lonely and hurt and ashamed and embarrassed I was about myself. I let myself feel bad for myself. And this wasn't like me, feeling sorry for myself. For the first time, it was like a form of self-empathy or compassion. I was like, dude, this is so hard for you. Like, you're so scared right now, And I just let myself feel that, and I cried. I cried. And eventually, I decided, well, I don't exist, and I've got all this time on my hands. And because, I have made so many mistakes and nobody wants to be around me anymore and no one wants to talk to me, what I'm going to do is I'll just kind of create my own worlds. And I started going into solitary depths. Not this one specifically. I hope to do this soon. Thanks again, Brandon. But I started descending into the dungeon. All right. And what I realized is I always wanted to be heroic when I played. I always wanted to be the one who saved everything. I always wanted to be the character that beat the bad guy. And I started to wonder why I didn't want to be the bad guy or even be an imperfect protagonist. And I realized that this was, part of it. It was that I was denying my own darkness, right? Because I already thought I was a bad guy. And so what would that mean if I started thinking about being a worse guy? What would that mean? What if I found out these things about myself? What if I wanted to hurt people? What if I was cruel? But I was like, well, I don't exist anymore. And I'm alone. And there's nothing for me to do. So I might as well just see what's inside. And the weirdest thing happened is that, I didn't play out and out evil characters. Like, I find that pretty boring. It's kind of like when you get bored while playing like a video game like Grand Theft Auto and you play on like cheat mode, and it's like you can only blow up, use a rocket launcher on everything for about 10 minutes until you're like, okay, I'm pretty bored here. But as I sort of thought about, how could my character do something that's cruel, something that made me feel bad, How could I make a choice here to betray somebody? Could I make a choice right now to take advantage of another character in this game in a way that made me feel bad, but I just did it? And the weirdest thing is that it did make me feel, it was difficult. I felt uncomfortable while I was doing it, but then afterwards I felt like I had let go of something, or that I had made peace with something. And I realized that I had begun my path of re-encountering my shadow. This was part of my process to re-encounter my shadow. And I thought about in the Mork Borg playthrough that I had yesterday, assuming you're watching this on the day that it releases, this guy asked me for help, and instead of helping him, I double-crossed him and killed him. And I took my stupid D2 damage whip and wrapped it around him and pulled until his eyes bulged out. I mean, that's horrible, right? I would never do that. And it was fun. Why? Well, if you are a person that has not made peace with your shadow, or you're not working on it, or you're not open to it, you would probably say that what that means about me is that I have a hidden desire to strangulate someone with a whip. And if you are one such midwit, then you would have a sense of glee, if you didn't like me especially, that you have identified a moral failure of mine, and that you have unearthed some sickness in me, some derangement in me. And you can use that against me, and you can say that I actually did something that upset you. Okay? And you can do that. You're free to. You can't really do anything to me, though, because I already lost everything many times. But you could. It's intellectually dishonest. That's not true. But what happened on my end is that, no, I don't want to do that to somebody. I have no desire to do that. But do I have anger? Do I have times in my life when I want to be selfish and do whatever I want to get what I want? Yeah. Do I have times where I agree with somebody, or I make a promise to them, and suddenly something better comes along and I want to break it and be disloyal and do what I want? Yes, I do. Do I want to hurt a person who makes me mad or that I don't like? Yeah. Do I do any of those things? Of course not. It's not right. It's not right to hurt people. It's not right to betray people. If you give someone your word, you got to keep it. It's never right. I mean, other than self-defense, to kill someone. And even then, I don't think it's got to be a pretty extreme scenario to wrap a whip around their neck to do it. But no, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I will defend and protect anyone who tries to do any of those things to somebody else. But those things are in me because I'm human. The darkness is in me because I am a human. And I don't know how we as an entire population, at least in this country that I'm in, have forgotten this fact that people are fallible and that people can be nasty and brutish and cruel, and that everyone is capable of that. But as we watch endless scrolling streams of people being at their very best and their very most perfect opinions and their absolute best positions on things, we all engage in this twisted liar's poker and believe that some people are good and perfect and some people are bad and rotten. But all of us know everything we've done and everything we think. And so you can lie to me, you can lie to everyone else. But if you're watching this video right now, you have parts of you that are amazing and you have parts of you that are miserable and terrible and cruel. You have both. There's no way anyone could make a case to me that that's not true. I've just peered into the human heart too long. I've stared at it like Abaddon the Despoiler into the Astronomicon. Bonus points if you got that reference. I know this because this is the best part about being a human, is that we are capable of evil. And that means that when we choose good, it means something. If we are people who are not capable of evil, if we're only good, then we don't have free will. We are not autonomous beings. We don't have souls. It's the fact that we have that choice and that we choose to be kind and loving and merciful and caring and protective. That's the most beautiful thing about people. That's the most beautiful thing. Everyone can be redeemed. No one is beyond that point because everybody has a shadow. And people who have never had their shadows revealed in any way, you're just lucky. Okay? So I don't want to soapbox on that too much. It's a personal feeling of mine that really troubles me, is that we just live in a time when we just forget that humans are so fallible and it's so hard to make the right choice. And it's so hard to, it's even harder for some people based on different stuff. But I don't forget that. I think that everybody is worth giving another chance to, at least one. Okay. And I believe that when I play, especially solo games, but again, this can happen in any setting. I focus on solo because outside of when I'm like playing on this channel, it's just for me, right? It's when I'm playing in a group, even if I don't mean to, and even if I'm comfortable with the group, I'm modifying my responses. I'm changing the way I say things or think of things. When I'm playing by myself, whatever comes to my mind is a pure flow of like fresh water of thought. And because of that, I can take that surge of thought and I can look at it and I can do the thing where I immediately judge it and try to put up a dam and say, no, that's not a right thought. That's wrong. You're thinking wrong. Or I can just let that come. And I can look at that. And even if it's water that I don't like, I say, oh no, I don't like that exists in me. What the hell is that? Well, just let it flow. What is that? Okay. So you were playing the game and you were, somebody who was a companion of yours. They were looking for the next village with binoculars over a ledge. And for no reason at all, you have the thought that you ran up behind him and pushed him over the ledge. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Go seek help, right? No. Why did you do that? Just don't put yourself in mind jail. Just stop and think why you did that. What does that mean? Are you going to do that? No, I don't think anyone watching this video, I hope, and even statistically, 0.001% of you would ever push someone off a cliff for any reason. But you did in the game. My question is, can you understand what that was without judging it? Can you have a conversation with your shadow of what that meant? Because the shadow doesn't speak in our language. It speaks in just very basic Gestalt imagery of the mind. And so maybe rather than doing what Twitter does, which is taking the worst impression of whatever it is, What if we held off on that? What if instead of saying, "Oh, you have a murderous instinct to push someone off a cliff," what prompted you for that? Because you might find something there. You might find that you felt that that companion was babysitting you. They weren't letting you go on your own adventure. Maybe you felt that they were undermining you. Maybe you felt that they were a burden to you, and that every time you had to, you had loot or something, you had to split it up and divvy it amongst everybody. Okay? So those are real things, and they might indicate something about you and your life. Maybe you're feeling babied by people and you want more independence. Maybe you're feeling burdened by somebody and you fantasize to just get rid of that burden and spread your own wings. Maybe you feel like someone's taking credit for things and you don't want that anymore and you want to stand up to them. Your mind does not play by like a national penal code of laws. Okay. Your mind isn't worried about like going to mind jail. Your mind is flashing an image before you, and it speaks through those symbols. It's why your dreams are so absolutely wacky, right? Because it speaks in symbols. We are able to explore scenarios that are well beyond the boundaries of what we do in everyday life. I don't know about you, but I don't carry around a warhammer or a sword all the time. And so because of that, when I'm playing a game, I have these tools and these circumstances that widen the possibilities of what can happen. It pushes moral scenarios to the extreme and allows me to test my reactions, my feelings about that. One thing I say about solo role-playing is trust whatever decision you made. It will make sense if you continue trusting it. And that's because your mind is writing this story for you. It already knows this, right? Your subconscious already has all this information. It just has to code it and print it out, like one of those little stock tickers from the Great Depression. And so if you take the time to just read that stock ticker and decode the symbols on there, the story is printing itself. The story is printing itself. Okay. And so I talked last time about this active imagination and how I feel that solo role-playing is a great form of active imagination. But I guess the thing I want to say this time, because I feel it by now, I'm just belaboring the same points over and over, is solo role-playing has to mean something, even if it means nothing. Okay. It doesn't have to be this great undertaking in which you say, "Oh, I'm going to do this every day and I'm going to become a better person." Probably not. But what solo role playing will do that so many things don't do is that it allows you time for structured thought that has boundaries on it. There is a reason why journaling works. It doesn't work for me. Never been able to do it, but this does. You need some sort of structured thought to process the garbage swimming around your subconscious. And if you allow that to come out and you allow that, and you even, I almost feel like, we talk so much about journaling in games. It's a campaign journal I got. Thank you once again, Max Moon. This stuff right here, we're listing these things, but we start to find stuff here. This almost becomes this like way that our mind starts printing out information that we're not ready to confront. And so if something happens while you're playing next time and you have some sort of impulse that is not socially acceptable, rather than pushing that away and rethinking of that because like, "Oh no, I can't think that way. That's bad. That's not the right way to think." I just want you to sit with it and say, "Okay, what does that mean about me?" I hope, and I see this trend so much more in games, is these preambles and disclaimers in games that say, "Oh, don't don't include any of the bad stuff about the world in this game. And I have to say, you know, so many games taking very serious stuff and turning all the characters into like cats. This is, it's okay to be silly, but this constant silliness, you know, as if nothing can ever have stakes, that nothing can ever be dreadful, that nothing can ever be darkness. As if avoiding darkness will somehow cure us. No, it's the opposite. Avoiding darkness concentrates the shadow within you until it's like a hyper distillated, pure, you know, Walter White meth grade level shadow. Don't let that happen. Embrace the darkness in games, lean into the darkness, and hey, maybe that's no longer or not right now acceptable, you know, in RPGs writ large, but guess what? For us solo players, it's our table. We're the GM. We can think and do and think about anything that we think or do in any way that we want. Hope you enjoyed this discussion of shadow work. I hope in some way it was informative. And if you hated it and felt like, wow, Man Alone's really going downhill, that's just your shadow, man. You know, it's not my problem. It might be my problem a little.